So my name is Alexander Voss. I'm currently the CEO of VectorY. I'm very happy to be able to moderate this panel and see people come back from lunch to join us in the discussion here. So the title here, what does it take to successfully build an advanced therapy company in Europe? I think we have a great panel here with different folks with a lot of experience over many years in building companies. Julia Berretta from Genespire, Stéphane Boissel from SparingVision, Miguel Forte, CEO of Therapeutics, Kasper Møller, Chief Technical Officer of agency Biologics, and Chris Vann from Autolus. So very happy to take you through different aspects of building a company from scratch in the ATMP field, a very challenging and new field. Many of you have been around that, so we'll address topics like financing, pipeline and business model decisions that are critical for the strategy. How do you build a team and hire and retain talent? Key questions around capital investment, building infrastructure, when and how to do that, and regulatory. And if we have time, we have certainly other topics we can address as well. So let me just start with asking the panel members to give a short introduction of themselves, what they're doing, what their company is doing, so you can place that a little bit in the context of the follow-on questions when we go through each one of the topics personally, individually. So please, Julia, if you want to kick it off. Yes.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Well, first of all, thanks a lot to the organizer for inviting me to this panel. It's a real honor. It's actually a first for me at ARM, and I'm discovering this conference with great pleasure. I'm the CEO of Genespire, which is a gene therapy company located in Milan, in Italy. We're a preclinical stage company. We were incepted a couple of years ago, and we are developing gene therapies based on what we call immune-shielded lentiviral vectors, which are lentiviral vectors that are allowing us, for the first time, to use this technology directly in vivo in a systemic fashion in patients. And actually, we're targeting the liver in order to deliver gene therapies directly and therapeutic genes directly to this organ. And this actually is allowing us to develop off-the-shelf products that have the possibility to be one-time treatments. And actually, we're aiming for cures here, both in adult patients, but also in pediatric patients, which are probably the most underserved population in this area. And so we're applying this in different types of diseases, ranging from inherited metabolic diseases, but also diseases where it actually needs replacement therapy, and with a product that can then be delivered by the liver and actually secreted by the liver in a systemic fashion. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Please, Miguel.
Good. Thank you, Alexander. Thanks again to the organization for inviting me. I mean, it's a very relevant topic, keen to discuss. There are several challenges, but huge opportunities. I'm Miguel Forte, CEO of Therapeutics. Therapeutics is a cell therapy company listed in Euronext, based in Brussels, which is actually Lebanon, which is just outside. And we are developing therapy for bone regeneration. The basis of the company really is using MSCs, professionalized for a therapeutic effect. MSCs are easy to get programmed or induced into forming bone, and that's the basis of the technology. It's important to say that we've been around for a while, starting with an autologous approach, fresh, to become allogeneic, cryopreserved, scaled up. And this is all important things that we may discuss later on. And also listed quite a while ago, with strong preclinical and clinical data of the cells to be able to regenerate bone. And currently conducting a controlled study where we are aiming to accelerate the resolution of complicated fractures, which will not only accelerate the well-being of the patient, reduce the costs, but also prevent complications of delayed fractures later on. As we will be discussing, the adversity of but the context has made us focus on that asset. But the vision is to actually consider MSCs, mesenchymal stromal cells, and professionalize them further by using different alternative sources instead of donors, but also genetic modification instead of just the factor conditioning to growth. And I think all of those things in terms of strategy, path, time, pre and post IPO, and all the elements that go with it are things that we'll be able to discuss in the topic today.
Chris.
Thank you. I'm Chris Vann. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Autolus. And along with all of my panelists here, we all share the vision of bringing substantial benefit to patients. And I think we also all share the vision of hopefully more of that comes from Europe, because certainly there's a lot of opportunity here with the science. And we'd like to obviously be able to build companies that can deliver that to patients. Autolus is actually a company that programs autologous T cells, CAR T cells. Our lead asset is actually in late stage clinical studies, so we're preparing for its registration and commercialization.
Stéphane?
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me today. So my name is Stéphane Boissel. I'm the CEO of SparingVision, and SparingVision is a genomic medicine play in ophthalmology. We are only working on in vivo technologies across 3 different pillars: a gene therapy pillar, a genome editing pillar, and we are developing that pillar or platform in collaboration with Therapeutics, and an in vivo reprogramming pillar. And our lead asset, which is a gene-independent gene therapy product developed in retinitis pigmentosa, is expected to reach clinical stage in the second part of 2022.
Kasper, please, last but not least.
Thank you. My name is Kasper Møller. I'm heading global operations for AGC Biologics. And well, AGC is a CDMO. We are both in the protein space and in the cell and gene space. And we were so fortunate to be able to acquire Møller that you might know 2 years ago, and that's how we entered cell and gene. And then last year we acquired the former Novartis facility in Longmont, so we have lots of capacity for viral vector manufacturing, and our ambition is to provide all services needed for cell and gene in all regions.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So I think a broad range of different companies here, so for a lively discussion. Wanted to kick it off with the first topic related to financing, and you may have guessed already from the intros that these companies share a different heritage and origin. So depending on that origin, you may choose a different path to arrange your financing. There are different pathways there. So I just wanted to ask the panel basically what you think would be interesting for the audience to comment on from a differentiation pathway to see what has been the financing strategy that you've employed and how you see that going forward in the future. Maybe Julia, you want to kick it off, I think, with great science from the institutions you've been originating from, and how do you take that then from idea, conception of trying to build a company to where you are today and how you see the future?
Yeah, I think that we have a pretty peculiar situation. As you just mentioned, we're actually spinning out from a famous research institute in Milan called SRTJet, which is led by Professor Luigi Naldini, one of the probably most well-renowned scientists in the field of gene therapy, and in particular lentiviral vectors. And we're actually co-founded by the Italian Telethon Foundation and the Ospedale San Raffaele, so the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan, as well as Luigi Naldini himself, who is one of our scientific founders, and Alessio Cantù. And so we're building on very robust scientific and translational foundations, which actually allowed us to attract one of the leading European investors, Sofinnova Partners, at company inception, really. And they came in and invested 16 million at the very beginning of the company. 16. No, we're European Series A, not an American one. So this really allowed us to really to kick it off, and I think it's very important from our size company's perspective and really for a company that is starting, that you get an investor in that is also not only enable you to start, but that will also, you know, move with you in the next phases and you know, get through the extra mile with you, and not just, you know, get out at the first opportunity. And this is definitely something that.
So you have one lead.
So we have
VC.
one lead VC.
How does that work for you compared to having maybe more of a consortium?
Yes, so at the moment we have one lead VC. So we actually started the fundraising a short time ago. So we may have more than one in the future. But at the moment we have one. Actually, Sofinnova Partners invested to two funds. So we have two funds investing, but under the umbrella of Sofinnova Partners, the Capital Fund, as well as to the Sofinnova Teleton Fund, which is quite interesting structure that they set up together with the Italian Teleton Foundation in order to invest primarily in Italian science and really kind of foster this Italian biotech ecosystem, which hasn't historically been so strong, but is now really taken off. And Genespire is really part of these new companies. And this allows us also to build very strong interactions with other startups that are coming up in Italy at the moment. So,
If we move to Miguel, right? I think you're in a different environment, already public, right? With a type of ATMP company, and how does that work for you? And can you comment on some of the rationale to take the company public, maybe even before you joined, I guess? But you know, and how does that play out for you at this moment?
Sure. Now, I think. I was thinking what I was going to answer to that before, and I thought probably, I mean, before IPO you can walk, after IPO you've got to run. I think it's the relationship with your investors is essential, right? They are partners in the process. Because life is tough, development is very challenging. We're talking about ATMP with all the huge value, but the difficult challenge is to take it through the different steps of development. You need to have investors that are willing to take risk, understand the length of the process, and be partners to you. So obviously, in the context of a private company, you have a better advantage of that. I mean, not all investors are good, but at least you can have them identified. I think for Europe, I think we're seeing quite a serious, because I've engaged with in a private context before, we're seeing a lot of investors and investor organizations taking higher risk and bigger commitment to the field, which is an important thing, and I think we could talk about that. But then it comes a moment where you do an IPO, and in a way your investors become fuzzy, right? You can no longer talk to them the same way. And particularly if you're a company with 75% of your shareholders being retail, it is virtually very difficult to make them understand the challenges. So I think it's very important to decide when and why you do an IPO, where you do it, and anticipate your cruising speed afterwards. Because if you still have a long way to go back to the running, you're going to have a challenge. If you believe that you're close to success, then I think IPO is a good opportunity because it gives you cash, it gives you the visibility, and gives you the opportunity to grow into a different thing. So deciding is very important. I should say that potentially for us, even though, as you said, it was before my time, it was probably too early. Now that I look at it, it might have been perfect at the time. And remember, this was in 2015 anyway.
Yeah, so the mix of retail and institutional is maybe a little bit atypical, right? Was it by design that you wanted to have a broad retail investor base, or has it evolved over time in that direction?
It was significant from the beginning, but it evolved with the time as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've got to say, in all fairness, we do have, in those 25%, and this is public, it's better, 3 main investors, of which you have a relationship which is similar to understanding the market context in terms of privileged information, but you have an opportunity to have a closer relationship with them. But nevertheless, it's a relationship respecting market rules, i.e. what you tell to everybody, and everybody else is very fuzzy to listen to you.
Yeah. Chris, I think you have also taken more important steps, I think starting also from one big, solid, let's say, founding investor and then, to the current stage. Maybe you want to comment a little bit on that process and some trade-offs of either continuing longer for private and then instead going public, right?
Yeah, so I think, Autolus has clearly benefited from the company that was engaged in founding it. The investor was Syncona. For those of you who don't know, it's now a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange, but it was before times the investment arm of the Wellcome Trust. So clearly they I think, imbued a longer-term vision, and they were very helpful in allowing the company to focus. We then, during the Series B and C, added initially UK investors and then some international investors, including from Switzerland and crossover funds. But I think one of the challenges about being a biotech company in Europe is eventually you reach a size where this is a very expensive business, and I'm really grateful now that we're seeing the development of CDMOs, clinical research organizations. But when Autolus was really being formed in the early stages, we assumed we would have to do lots of the innovation ourselves, whether it was in product delivery, whether it was actually in vector supply, whether it was in manufacturing, and that's a very expensive business. So to get to market, is always expensive, but if you're also building infrastructure like your own manufacturing facilities, if you're also building the ability to deliver products, it's hugely expensive. So to date, Autolus raised 700 million. We probably need to raise, obviously, more to be able to fully commercialize our product. And so you reach a threshold in Europe where, frankly, the access to capital through raising shares is limited here. So that was basically the reason why we went around, I'm trying to remember the exact year, but it was around 2018, if I remember, that we actually listed on NASDAQ Stock Exchange. And that had the advantage for us, actually, specialist investors and people who knew the space who would have the patience to follow the story and grow the company. I think in Europe, even if you could get to those kind of sums that we need to raise, one of the challenges you would have is that to some extent the specialist investors have left European stock exchanges. So you can find individual venture capital companies for a certain level of funding, but you do kind of reach a limit where it's uncomfortable for them to be sole investors or one of the principal, maybe a 3 or 4 investors. So that's actually behind the story of why Autolus was NASDAQ listed.
Okay, thanks. Great. So I think the nice thing about Europe is that every country is a little different, and I think, Stéphane, you have an interesting financing history as well, coming out of the French ecosystem, right? It was the basis of SparingVision. Maybe you want to share some of that experience and your view also, maybe in the context of what Chris and Miguel have shared. How do you see the next steps after that?
So the story of the lead asset started like 20 years ago, but the company was only founded in 2016 as a spin-off from the Institut La Vision in Paris. And then we closed our Series A in September of 2020. We've raised $70 million, 70, American size, with a good panel, a diversified panel of investors, being both strategic, like Foundation Fighting Blindness in the US, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in the US as well, and more traditional VCs such as JETO, Ezios, Forbio, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. And then we, in 2021, expanded the capital through first an acquisition. We bought a company and we paid in shares for this acquisition. Then we entered into a strategic alliance with Intelia. We are the licensee, not the licensor, so we had to pay an upfront, and we've paid that upfront in shares as well. So Intelia became a shareholder in the company. We are at a stage where we are seeking, obviously, because we have a large portfolio of very expensive to develop product, of raising the next round of financing. A few months ago, if we had had the same discussion, I would have told you, well, maybe we'll be contemplating a public listing sometimes, not in Europe, but in the US. I think this is something we can probably forget for the time being. So we have pivoted away from the kind of crossover fund that would have been the natural next step for us a few months ago, to a long-only corporate fund and other sources of long-term capital. And this is what I'm currently spending most of my time on, currently.
Yeah, of course. No, I think the crossover dimension is kind of faded away a little bit farther in the distance at this point. Maybe on Kasper, right? I think you obviously have a little bit of a different business model as a CDMO, but made a big acquisition with Molmed and enhancing your capabilities. Maybe one question also in the context of financing our companies, right? Are you, apart from a traditional fee-for-service model, are you also taking equity components in your clients as part of sharing the risk, or how do you view that, both tactically and strategically?
So, well, in general, we do not. I think, of course, occasionally we are being approached about that, but I mean, strategically as a CDMO, we have decided not to do it because it creates some, let's say, whether you set up some firewalls or not, but it creates some issues maybe with priorities and, I mean, between resources and projects and for other clients. So, I mean, we try to be a pure CDMO, only doing I mean, contracted projects, so we don't have own products and we don't take equity in projects.
People ask you to take equity, or?
It's not very often, but it is happening. Yes, I think yeah, it's not. I mean, an uncommon idea if you have. I mean, if you are missing some final parts of the financing, it's possible. But I think, I mean, as a CDMO, I think our role is really to allow innovator companies to focus on development and eventually, I mean, commercial distribution, and we can focus on manufacturing. And the way, and I acknowledge that in cell and gene, there is, it's different than producing antibodies, of course. It's this, some of these things of that this close connection between development and manufacturing and these hurdles of tech transfer for the cell part of it, that is, of course, it reminds a little bit like, I mean, when I joined the biopharma industry originally in, I don't know, 20 years ago, this was also a little bit the concept with, at least with many recombinant proteins, that was scared of outsourcing because, at least for the drug substance part. Today, what I see with in the cell and gene is that the viral vector part, that's okay, that can be outsourced. There's a little bit more concern about the cell part. Of course, there are CDMOs, and we also do that. I mean, Molmed has 3 commercial products. It's not, I mean, lots of experience in that, but there's much more diversity, so it's difficult to make really efficient platform processes, and I do see that, but I think what we can do is to invest in development of platforms so that we can make it more efficient to manufacture, and we can get to a stage in some years where we are with proteins today in terms of outsourcing and make it, I mean, the supply chain more efficient. I think that's really our task.
Yeah, you know, clearly the topic of financing is on the top of everybody's agenda. And we can talk, I think, the whole panel just on that topic alone. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit on the whole pipeline and business model topic, which, you know, in building the strategy of the company, clearly is one that is fundamental to the way we can execute. And you know, clearly that's an arduous and iterative process, but the core of the business. So, you know, as we talked before, Stéphane, I think you had an interesting story on how that evolved within SparingVision, and how you migrated and put your thoughts together on how to build, let's say, more of a pipeline perspective for the company. So I think that would be interesting if you comment on that.
Yeah, sure. So when I came on board, we closed the Series A in September of 2020. The company was a single asset company with this legacy asset that has been developed in academia for like 20 years. And we aligned, again, when I joined with the incoming investors and with the board, on a strategy to expand the portfolio. And so really SparingVision is about a build-up in the space of genomic medicine in ophthalmology. So we are going to stay extremely focused on ophthalmology, extremely focused on genomic medicine. We are not going to go into other biologics, or other chemical entities, and we are going to be extremely focused on in vivo. We are not going to do in vivo and ex vivo in parallel. So with that said, we've been looking at where can we go, and we've decided on those 3 pillars or those 3 platforms, which we believe are very synergistic when it comes to manufacturing, because at the end of the day, these are stuff that you put into a vector, viral or non-viral vector, but also in terms of regulatory and development pathways. And we are continuing to look at other assets that could complement what we have. The idea being to really develop a world leader in our space where we see a lack of innovation.
Did you see that as an interactive process also with investors? Because you can get into discussions about people say, well, like it's extremely focused, and we'd like to see a little bit of a broader, perspective on the technology versus, if you go the other way, you can also not do it right and say, well, you're totally diversified. So was that part of the dialogue with external investors, see the response, or more of a company internal type of an exercise?
No, that was only internal, but also it was a different time, 2020, everything was possible. So the more you do, the better you are. And it's fair to say that now people are asking us whether we should not refocus sometimes on some stuff, which is fair. And we are just adapting to the resources we have. But we have no issues accessing financing for the time being. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to make any choice on the portfolio. And again, we are going to continue to expand the portfolio. Yeah. Should we have the appropriate level of resources to develop the portfolio.
Yeah. And so in a company history, there are always times where, new perspectives are developing, right? Also, Miguel, I think your situation at Bone Therapeutics in terms of assessing the strategy and how to focus on initial and follow-on products, I think is an interesting part to share as well for the audience. When you came in, you came and looked at a certain situation, and what was your response to that?
Yeah. I think, obviously, managing your portfolio is a balance between the vision you have, what your technology can deliver, or you can aggregate to your technology. So it's a kind of a strategic discussion, and then what you can afford to do. Like, it's always the 2 elements. As I said, there was a clear vision there in terms of using MSCs for a purpose. I came in with a clear vision, and I believe the field is moving more and more that way, that the cells can be optimized through multiple ways, including more and more a gene modification of those cells. Right? So that obviously led us to expand, keeping true to our philosophy, which is MSCs for a therapeutic purpose, professionalized to that therapeutic purpose. Starting with bone, which kind of a low-hanging fruit for MSCs, and going beyond. That makes sense, that inspires people, that brings talent, but not necessarily is easy because of the timelines and the differential between an asset in clinical stage and the expectations of the market. And remember, the market and the audience that I address is not your private investor, but it is the retail, versus a longer term, potentially higher value, significant risk, a completely different proposition. So you need to adapt your vision to the resources you have, the audience you can reach, and what you can make in the context.
Okay, very interesting then. So Julia, you may still be in the middle of this whole process, or have you kind of set what you need to do or want to do, at least for the foreseeable future?
We did, but I think that this is, of course, in the life of a company, as everybody probably here has experienced, an iterative process. So you do fix, for a certain amount of time, and then you may, re-estimate or re-evaluate things at a later point in time. I think that the risk for a company like ours, which is a platform company, is to, or at least the challenge from a pipeline perspective, is to find the right equilibrium between the exploitation of your platform to a certain extent, because you don't want to develop, of course, a single asset in those cases, but at the other side also not, focus. And I think, Stéphane, you used this word several times, and I think it's a very important one, since, of course, you can't dilute your resources upon a number of programs, at least, again, not at our stages and with our financing as well. But I think this is also something that should be taken into consideration in some larger or more advanced organizations from time to time. So I think that, yes, it's an iterative process. The process that we decided to take when building really the initial pipeline of the company was really to start with some KOL discussions, as most of the people do, just to really evaluate what where technology could make the most impact. I think impact is of course, the key and where the unmet need was sitting. And then we decided actually to start several programs in parallel, but really on the initial research phases, in order to then select the lead program that would move forward. And actually we're continuously reiterating this process in order to, in this way, have a pipeline that still has something that is coming in at very early stages, but at the same time have only one program which is moving forward at a high speed. And this is actually at our stage, and again with our financing at the moment, the strategy that we found the most effective, and which is actually...
and this reassessment is also happening together with the Scientific Advisory Board, or do you have some group like that? Yes?
No, absolutely. Scientific Advisory Board, KOLs, as well as, of course, some marketing assessments and so forth, and we're putting all of this together and really, in order to reevaluate, evaluate the lead candidates and the structuring of the pipeline.
I think, Alex, probably I would just reiterate one thing, which is a balance between a focus to deliver on the focus and an opportunity to have a follow-on and a program.
Absolutely.
And things that will take you beyond that afterwards, right? Not a single process, but a focus to deliver and then other things to go up.
And the identification of like a certain number or one or more indications to give I think a perspective of where the company is headed rather than a more, let's say, generic technology platform.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you find that that's an important element for investors to recognize that?
It is, because it's a pipeline, right? It's different things, right? And we should not make two mistakes. One is focus on a single one, and the second is to concentrate on all of them, right?
Yes.
So it's a balance between the two, enough resources, enough focus to deliver on your main asset, because that's going to bring value sooner, you hope, and you make right decisions about that, but then build a subsequent portfolio that enables you to have not only plans B, but a sustained growth.
Yeah. No, I think it's clearly an iterative process which is partially internal, but really important also to look at the outside investor appetite and also the key and the medical need, because they may also evolve clearly in the market, right? So we need people, right? We need people for building these companies, and I think there's given the environment and the capital influx, clearly a shortage of talent. Several companies have gone through these stages here on the podium. Maybe Chris, you started clearly with a small team, taken that all the way to be more a mature public company at the moment. And so I think the composition of the team may have changed. What kind of a discussion do you have internally about assessment of what capabilities you need in the senior leadership team? How do you go about, thinking through those topics about how you build your organization step by step?
So it's an interesting question, because it's actually, for Autolus, a number of questions within a question. So one of the things that we found, the company from very early on was set up with a global horizon. So if you look at our senior leadership team, there are as many nationalities as there are people in it, essentially. And clearly, we took the view that we would find the right people and they would come together. If you look at other parts of our business, there's been different personnel challenges as we've been along the journey. I mean, our researchers, over 50% of them don't hold a British passport, so clearly we had to navigate the Brexit issue, and that's a whole topic in its own right. We can discuss that another day. But one of the areas where we've actually found... One of the areas where we actually found the biggest challenge is actually finding manufacturing expertise. And one of the things I think that is inherent to our business is that you need a catalyst of a cluster. So one of the challenges, frankly, that companies like ourselves have is when we're the lead company in an area building that capability, is not to get turnover. And one of the things that we're very keen to do is to take people into our manufacturing plant, but also maintain them so that they don't just get trained, leave, and then go to a higher job in another organization. So we have a number of steps to do that. And another aspect of that is we've had to look very carefully and creatively at where to source manufacturing people from, because you need very disciplined people used to clean room environments. But for example, you know, the type of people who can operate some of the machines that we have are baristas, bakers. So what we've actually done is started looking at the features of the people we need, train the people. But certainly I would say in Europe, talent is a challenge for certain disciplines, particularly manufacturing, because it doesn't currently exist. There is not a cluster there. And you do need to take very much, for other disciplines like development, for the management, you have to take a view of getting the best people available and then finding a way to work with them, even if it's remote.
Yeah. And so the original founders of the company, are they still associated with the day-to-day management at this stage, or has that evolved?
So yes, absolutely. So we've actually also been able to keep a relatively consistent team in place. Obviously, we're 7 years old now. We've had, I would guess, somewhere in the region of about a third of the people turnover, but that's pretty reasonable given the age of the company.
Yeah. Stéphane, you have from the get-go, I guess, executed transatlantically as you framed it, I guess. Maybe you want to comment on that also from your team composition, right?
Yeah, sure. So we had to, I had to recruit a team because we had no team. So in 12 months, we recruited a CMO, a CTO, a COO, a CFO, a Chief Development Officer, and of course a lot of employees as well. And we aligned very rapidly with the board on the following principle, is that we were going to look for the talents independently of where they were and where they wanted to work from. And by the way, that was one of the only positive things of COVID, is that it has dramatically changed the way we operate, at least in our business. And what is today possible in terms of working from home, and your home can be 12,000 miles away, was probably not possible before. So as far as we are concerned, we have like 20% in Paris, 4 in Philadelphia, 2 in Boston, 1 in San Francisco. And again, we are opening position, and we are making very clear that the person will be able to work wherever she or he wants, as long as the person is committing to come to see us in Paris.
And what are you doing to keep the team together, just apart from the recent COVID restrictions? How often do you meet and make sure that the team really is together, other than just meeting via video? Yeah.
So I'm the one traveling the most to go and meet with these people. But more seriously, we ask for everybody to be in the Paris office at least once per quarter. And we have weekly, Zoom meetings with the whole staff. So we are trying to stay connected. But again, I think the way we are working has really changed, and I don't see that as a problem, as an obstacle. I mean, people feel good. The good thing, one of the good things in Europe, by the way, compared to what we can experience in the US, is that there is a strong loyalty to the project and to the employer. So yes, it's more difficult to find people, but when they are on board, they tend to stay longer. And so yes. I mean, that's
and Julia, you really started building the team. You joined the team as well. So how that play out? Because clearly, I think from the situation in Italy, and have you built an international team as well, or is it more Italian focused? Or?
No, absolutely. I think that in our business we need international teams, and history tells that it's clearly much more easy and convenient also to make business and to recruit talent on an international basis. And as you were saying before, clearly the COVID situation has somehow helped from this perspective to be able to attract talents from abroad. From my perspective, team is everything. Since you can start with a pipeline that may be so and so, if I may say so, and build around that and attract new technologies and make acquisitions and so forth. But if you don't have a strong team that is actually able to develop on this and to build on this, you don't have anything. And that's really, I think, the major I mean, probably the most important thing within the company is the people that you're actually bringing in. And I've put in the last couple of years a lot of energy in this, because I think that not only do you have to recruit the right talents, and again, today the world is slightly more open than it was before from this perspective, but you also have to constitute a team. Not only people working together somehow. And in order to constitute a team, you have to have people that have the same objective, the same goal, the same vision somehow, and that's what actually is going to make the people stick together and work in the most efficient way, and wanting to stay in the company for a longer term. So I think that you're right. It's easier. Well, it's more difficult to recruit people in Europe than in the US, but you also have slightly less turnover here. However, I mean, our field is also developing in Europe, and so turnover may also increase, and COVID is also going to help somehow, or actually to be a challenge from this perspective, i.e. people are going to have more opportunities and work for companies that are not necessarily in their hometown or their home country, but also abroad. And so retention is going to be critical here. And for retention, there are many ways to make retention. But I think that what's ultimately working the best is to have the same goal and the same objective, and the willingness to be constructing.
You take deliberate steps in terms of, when it's okay, we have like a quarterly meeting, or different really steps to make sure the team feels like a team also as a so we actually, so I've until now been recruiting people on an international basis, and also Italian people. We have an office and currently constructing laboratories in Italy, close to Milan, to be also close to our collaborators at the SRT Institute. We're actually currently doing most of the R&D work that we're moving forward. And actually, we recruited most of the people from abroad and in Italy, but to work in Italy. And so we've been lucky enough, actually, to be able to attract people to work and to come from other countries, from the UK, from France, and to actually relocate to Italy. And for the people who are traveling, because there are a couple of people not living there, we're definitely doing that on a very regular basis in order to kind of meet and because I think that the full virtual model, at least for a company our size and from at the stage at which we are, is something that I don't think is adapted for our company at least. And therefore, a mixed model whereby you have in-person meetings and you have in-person get-togethers, and you really create this spirit is actually key for building the company. Yeah, I think generally you see an environment where people can remote, but also the willingness to relocate. I think is even with the younger staff is being increasing, right? In building teams in my previous companies, we've seen that as well, and I think that's impressive that you can get people to really share the vision and the mission, and they're willing to really make a big step in their life to do that. So. Switching gears a little bit, I think the next topic I wanted to address, which has been going around this conference already, a topic of managing capital investment, and that's kind of a euphemism for investment in manufacturing, usually in our space, right? So, very important decisions to make, because you take one step and you basically lock yourself in, at least for a number of years. Maybe to kick it off, I think it would be great to ask Kasper a little bit to share their perspective, because you're helping companies to bridge some of those decisions. What are your thoughts? Why should we, consider CDMOs? Right? Is it just a cost perspective? Is it skills? How are you having these discussions with your clients sometimes when they are considering maybe to put investment in plant in front of them?
I mean, the advantage for early stage companies is, of course, huge, unless you have a very big pipeline and want to deal with all the development and manufacturing in-house. But I think, so I think it's very basic, everybody knows. So, I mean, if you have a CDMO that is well experienced in the field, you can get access to that experience, and it should take you faster to the end goal and be able to supply something to the patients, right? I mean, that's what everybody wants to achieve, and I think that's a key thing that we can do. In terms of facilities, we would then also, because in this space many of the clinical trials are with very few patients and so on, the amount of material to produce is very little, which means, of course, you bundle that and then you can sort of afford to run a facility, and that's, of course, why there are CMOs at all. Over the years, the CDMOs will, of course, build up then the experience and expertise, like from taking a product all the way through to commercial licensing that will also benefit the early phase projects. So I think that's very clear. In terms of investments, of course, at some point in time, there's a consideration for any company if this is going to be a successful, a very large product. Is there a benefit of having that in-house, or is there not? And that these make versus buy calculations need to be made. Of course, being on the CDMO side, I see a lot of benefits of having it outsourced, but there might also be other perspectives. But I think in the end, I think there's not a lot of, if you have a really good partner, there's not a lot of difference running it in-house and external, and it should free up also management resources and capital to focus on innovation.
So I think we have interesting cases here on the panel of taking different directions or directions over time. So maybe with Chris and also Miguel. But maybe you start, Miguel. Because you went through a couple of considerations around this topic, right? So maybe that's interesting to share your thoughts there.
Well, I think it depends on all the elements that Kasper just mentioned. Just an example, together with Stéphane, in the past we actually made a divestment from an internal to a CDMO with all the flexibility that comes with it, as long as you have a good partner. I mean, CDMO relationship before money and anything else is the partnership and the quality that you have. And if you have that, then it's greatest value. You don't have to invest. Now, it also depends on a multiple other things. And if we take the example of bone therapeutics, after the IPO, very successful with an autologous product, at the time when it happened, use investment on a manufacturing. That could have made sense if the technology was going to be that one. As it progressed, it became, quite rightly so, an allogeneic cryopreserved. Why do you need that capacity and that cost? So then it makes sense to divest. And we actually took CDMO relationship to the best. We divested it to a CDMO and engaged on production, bearing in mind that with the divestment went not only the facility, but some of the hands that were doing. Behind all of this, you need always to keep the ownership of your product, of your process, which is essential. But it's really very important, I would say, that build and invest only if that makes sense from the return that you would expect for it. And it's probably later rather than sooner that you're going to do that.
So you now have feel a more flexible model than you had in the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. And Chris?
Yes.
Because you took a different step, right? So you took a step at the catapult.
It's got more cash than I
have. At the catapult, right? And then beyond that. So I think that's interesting.
Exactly. I think the first thing, isn't it great that there's actually a degree of choice now? Because we certainly, for example, have a CDMO relationship for Vector. We've employed 3 different models, if you like. To start off, we actually worked collaboratively with the universities to use their facilities to get early proof of concept studies underway. We then moved in clinical trials to cell and gene therapy catapult, which was a great move for us because essentially, and I'm probably not doing this a missed service, I'm probably going to get mugged when I leave the room, but it's a hotel facility where they take care of all of the environmental controls, all of the building, and you rent suites within the cell and gene therapy catapult facility. And clearly that was a great way to establish clinical trial delivery and expertise on the basis of that, which then allowed us to scale to a certain size. And then most recently, and I think this is very encouraging for Europe as a whole, we've been able to enter into an agreement with Reef, and we're having a facility built by Merit, and Reef, the property developers, will basically lease that back to us over a long period of time. And it's something that was quite common, I would say, in the US, but I think it's certainly less common in Europe as one potential operating model. But again, I think to Miguel's point, the main thing is you look at your business and you ask yourself, it's Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Which one is just right at this time for the development of the company, essentially?
This is the kind of question that keeps you awake, right? Because and it's a never-ending story as well. Because I mean, in my current company, in Genespire, we're not at that stage yet. So we're preclinical, and so we're not considering internalizing manufacturing for now. Clearly, it's a question of timing. You have to do it in the right moment. You have to do it, well, from my perspective, at the moment in which you have a robust enough pipeline and proof of concept as well in the clinic in order to ensure that your facility will be filled, because there's nothing more expensive than having an empty facility that you have to maintain, right? But in my former company, we're more advanced, and clearly this has been topic for discussion for, I would say, keeping us discussing for weeks, months, years even. So it's definitely, when is the right timing? When is the right moment? When do I do it? Because it's clear that having your own facility provides you some flexibility that you might not have always when you're working with an external CDMO. So for slot allocation, we're all been through this, I guess, in this field, and it's always a challenge. So, but on the other side, I mean, the burden of building your own facility and maintaining it even more than just building it, because I think that's, the building it, you can estimate the cost. The maintaining it is something that is slightly more complicated, and that's definitely something that it's in everybody's minds, I guess.
Well, next to do clinical development, right? It's the biggest block investment probably that you might make over the course of the history, right? And definitely locks you in. I think maybe the lease model is one that could be helpful in terms of not having to incur all the upfront capital investment, right? So that makes it maybe more palatable for some companies, depending on the lease rates that you're getting, of course. But very interesting. So I think another broader topic, which very integrates with strategy overall in terms of having interaction and input, is on the regulatory side, right? So regulatory strategy, and there's always a debate about when and how to interact with the regulatory authorities. And I'm just interested also in the view and experience of panels, because I know all of you have been in different situations, about what does that interaction bring to you? When do you think it's most appropriate to initiate that? Do you have to have like all your ducks in a row in terms of data, et cetera, and then talk about that with the FDA or EMA, or take a much earlier approach? Maybe Stéphane, you want to kick off that part of the discussion about what your view is, but you've had the same thing with TXL and other companies, so maybe take it a little broader than the current situation.
Are you sure you want to address this topic in 6 minutes?
Yeah. 6 minutes, 30 seconds, 29 counting.
That can take forever. No, well, things are changing for the good in Europe. When you look at pre-IND meetings, for example, there is the equivalent in Europe. It has been so for a long time, which is called protocol assistance. So systematically for each and any of our product, we do pre-IND and protocol assistance, or vice versa, and we learn from each of the authority to implement additional question in the next to come. And when also there is a significant change for the good introduced in 2022 in Europe, this is the new centralized procedure for clinical trial application. Yes. And you are very familiar with the fact that there was a large variety or diversity of timeline between submission and grant of authorization to conduct a trial in Europe until very recently. And there is now a guarantee under this new procedure. I'm blanking on the number, but it's a new EU regulation that was introduced a few months ago, that wherever you are in Europe, if you, and even if you work on GMOs like we all do, you know that within 5 months at max, you will have your go, no go. And prior to that, in countries I'm very familiar with, France, for example, it could have taken you forever, you know, and without any timeline, without any clear responsibility. So that's a major win for us, you know, in Europe, and I think it should really encourage all of us to reconsider Europe to conduct, you know, first-in-man study, which for some time was really in question for a lot of us.
And Chris, in the UK, right, is the intent to follow now also this new development of basically combining GMO and CTA application process, or are they following their own
well,
path?
they have their own, and I think probably one of the biggest developments in the UK in the recent months has actually been the innovative licensing and access pathway. And that's actually 4 products that are actually going to bring a substantial benefit, and many of the products that we deal with in the panel will fall into that. I think that offers a really important opportunity to go and see the health authorities early, and I would actually group in the HTA bodies as well as the regulatory bodies and recommend people do that. And I think one of the reasons we need to do that is, firstly, the approval times are going to be very accelerated for the products with which we're working with. And I think that the second thing is that quite often we're at the cutting edge of science, and it may even be evolving as we're developing our products, because we may actually be facing new challenges. And so I think it's good to get feedback, but I think it's also good to engage in order to get the dialogue going, particularly if you're going to go into a grey area. And I know there's always 2 camps there. Don't tell them and just give them a problem when you've got a great product, or there's the camp of we should engage and try to find a common solution. And I would recommend for most people to be in the second camp than the first one with cell and gene therapy.
Yes. And Miguel, you've had several situations where you...
and also having been a regulator in the past, I mean, the regulators are partners with us. They're learning and they want to be furthering the field like we do, but they have different roles. So we have to engage like we engage with other partners, candidly, firmly, and proactively. Right? That's what we should do. And then there's 2 dimensions to it. You do it as a company with your product, and you do it as a field through ARM and other organizations to make sure that we all evolve together. So it's a must. It's a must. It is essential for the success, and they want to be part of that success, and they will help you in their proper role.
Mm-hmm. Julia, you're already engaging with the regulatory authorities?
We're actually about to, yeah. So we're a little bit earlier than all the other panelists here on the table, but of course, I mean, early engagement is going to be key. Yes, so engaging into scientific advice discussions and this kind of
and you're doing national first and then going to EMA, or you go basically going straight to EMA for scientific advice?
Yeah, so this is currently in final decision, but it's I would say probably depending on the product, we have two products that are moving forward, and we may have a slightly different strategy on both of them.
You see, that's a bit of a strategic thing, that right?
Yes.
I think it's going to change a little bit with the new clinical trials regulation, but you probably would want to have a broad development discussion centrally, and specifically clinical trial management locally. And there's not, as long as you can bear with it, you should have multiple advice and then try to integrate. So again, the other message is it's part of the strategy, how you address it and how you manage. But that is kind of a company perspective, really, just how you navigate. Taking advantage of the system in a way, so to speak.
Yeah, if I may share just a personal opinion, picking up on what Chris said, I think early is not early, right? Because in most cases, you're indeed looking at a compressed, some type of advantageous regulatory pathway with PRIME or some otherwise accelerated approval. And so in order to have from the beginning an alignment with the regulatory authorities, what are the steps? If you start to count back, everything is already on the critical path from day one. So there's no sequential type of a discussion to be had in that you actually can meaningfully adjust your strategy and not incur delays. So I think, again, that's a consensus here on the panel. So I think looking at the clock here, we have actually a couple of reserved topics we can't even cover, but certainly will lead to further debate. But thank you very much for your attention here. I think we are all facing important challenges, but we're doing very important work in this field. If I look back, I think we already have come a lot further over the last, let's say, 10 years. I think ARM has played a very important role in bringing all these key elements together. Also, the engagements with the regulatory authorities, both in Europe as well as in the US, is extremely important. Your input and what you're observing in terms of challenges will be certainly taken on board, and that is something that will then drive change. I think what Miguel said, right? I think it is a dialogue. The regulatory authorities want to be part of the dialogue, and they will listen. They realize that technologies are so cutting edge that not always a more traditional approach will be the one that is the appropriate for the situation. So I think that is something that we can all benefit from. So I all wish you very much success in building your companies, and hopefully bring some important therapies to patients. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.